In a world where gaming giants dominate the spotlight, some absolute gems get overlooked. These are the games that flew under the radar, yet delivered unforgettable experiences. So, if you're looking for something fresh, unique, and criminally underrated, here are 20 masterpieces every gamer must play. At first glance, The Surge looks like a futuristic Dark Souls, and in many ways that's exactly what it is. But what sets it apart is its intense limb targeting system, allowing you to slice off enemy body parts to steal their armor and weapons. The combat is weighty, brutal, and deeply satisfying, with a rewarding progression system that encourages exploration. The dystopian setting, where a malfunctioning AI has turned an industrial facility into a death trap, adds an eerie atmosphere that keeps you on edge. Unlike many Souls-like games, The Surge also tells a compelling story through environmental storytelling and audio logs, slowly unraveling the tragedy of its world. I remember jumping into The Surge expecting just another Souls-like clone, but what I got was so much more. The feeling of slicing off an enemy's armored limb, then equipping that exact piece onto my character, felt incredibly rewarding. The game constantly forces you to adapt. Do you go for the quick kill, or risk targeting a specific part for better loot? The balance of risk and reward makes every encounter thrilling, and the industrial sci-fi setting gave it a fresh feel that most Souls-likes lack. Risk of Rain 2 took the original's pixel art roguelike formula and transformed it into a full 3D co-op shooter. The game thrives on chaos. Every enemy defeated drops loot, which stacks to create insane power-ups. You start off weak, barely able to survive against basic enemies, but by the time you reach the later stages, you're leaping across the map, firing off screen-filling attacks, and decimating bosses in seconds. Each playthrough is unique, thanks to randomized loot drops and diverse character classes that completely change how you approach combat. And when played with friends, Risk of Rain 2 becomes one of the most addictive co-op experiences out there. I'll never forget the first time I reached the final boss after hours of grinding through insane enemy waves. The adrenaline rush of barely making it through, relying on my overpowered loadout, was incredible. The best part? No two runs ever feel the same. Whether I was stacking crazy attack speed buffs or turning into an indestructible tank, the game always surprised me. Plus, playing with friends and strategizing our builds made every session pure chaotic fun. Imagine XCOM, but instead of soldiers, you're commanding a squad of Marvel superheroes. Marvel's Midnight Suns blends deep, tactical turn-based combat with a unique card system that adds a layer of strategy. You build decks for each hero, mixing and matching abilities to create devastating combos. But beyond the combat, the game features a surprisingly deep RPG system where you bond with iconic heroes like Wolverine, Doctor Strange, and Blade. Conversations, side activities, and training sessions at the Abbey flesh out each character, making them feel more human than ever before. I've always been a sucker for tactical games, and Midnight Suns nailed it. The combat is so satisfying, watching Captain Marvel go binary or Spider-Man chain attacks across multiple enemies never gets old. But what really hooked me was the downtime at the Abbey, just hanging out with my favorite superheroes. Sitting by a campfire with Ghost Rider, discussing the weight of his curse, or training with Blade to improve my skills, it's these small moments that make the game feel special.
Sure, why not?
Few games can be called true works of art, but Okami is one of them. Inspired by traditional Japanese sumi-e ink painting, its breathtaking visuals feel like a painting come to life. You play as Amaterasu, a wolf goddess tasked with restoring beauty to a corrupted world. The game's unique celestial brush mechanic lets you interact with the world by drawing symbols, whether it's slicing enemies in half or summoning a gust of wind to clear obstacles. The combat is fluid, the world is filled with charm, and the story is a heartfelt adventure that feels timeless. There's something magical about Okami that's hard to put into words. Every moment feels like a living painting, and the celestial brush mechanic is one of the most creative gameplay elements I've ever seen. But beyond the visuals, it's the story that stayed with me. The journey of Amaterasu and Isun is full of warmth, humor, and emotion. It's a game that makes you feel like you're part of something bigger, a piece of a grand legend. Let's get one thing straight. Titanfall 2 has one of the best FPS campaigns of all time, period. While the first Titanfall was a multiplayer-only experience, the sequel delivered an outstanding single-player mode that combined tight shooting mechanics with creative level design. The bond between pilot Jack Cooper and his Titan, BT-7274, makes for a surprisingly emotional story with moments of humor, heart, and heroism. The gameplay is fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying, with parkour mechanics that make every encounter dynamic. And then there's that level. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. I went into Titanfall 2 expecting just another shooter, but what I got was something truly special. The connection between Jack and BT felt real, and the game's campaign kept surprising me with new ideas at every turn. The time travel level blew my mind, and I can't count how many times I replayed the final mission just to experience its cinematic brilliance again. It's criminal that this game didn't get the recognition it deserved. Back in 2008, Mirror's Edge did something no other game had truly mastered: first-person parkour. Instead of being another shooter, it focused entirely on movement, momentum, and flow. You play as Faith, a runner navigating a dystopian city where the government tightly controls everything. The clean, minimalistic art style, bright white rooftops contrasted with bold red pathways, makes for one of the most visually striking games ever. Every jump, wall run, and roll feels exhilarating, and when you chain movements together perfectly, the game becomes pure magic. There's nothing quite like the rush of nailing a perfect rooftop run in Mirror's Edge. The sense of speed, the thrill of narrowly escaping enemies, and the sheer fluidity of movement make it one of the most immersive experiences I've ever had. It's not just a game, it's a feeling, a reminder that movement itself can be art. If Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Jet Set Radio, and Dead Rising had a baby, it would be Sunset Overdrive. This game is pure energy, an open-world explosion of neon colors, over-the-top weapons, and insane movement. Set in a city overrun by mutants after an energy drink catastrophe, yes, really, you play as an ultra-mobile survivor who grinds on rails, bounces off rooftops, and blasts enemies with some of the craziest weapons ever designed. It's hilarious, self-aware, and constantly throws new challenges at you. The traversal alone makes it worth playing. It's like an open-world roller coaster with zero downtime. Sunset Overdrive is one of those games that just makes you happy. The humor, the absurdity, and the sheer joy of movement make every moment fun. It's a game that doesn't take itself seriously, and sometimes that's exactly what gaming needs. I'll never forget launching a teddy bear rocket into a crowd of mutants while grinding on a power line. It's dumb in the best way possible.
You realize that makes us the scabs of the scabs.
Just get out there and make sure you grind up high and bounce. Hey, you gotta bounce and grind, and they're gonna chop you up.
When people talk about open-world crime games, Sleeping Dogs rarely gets the attention it deserves. It's basically Grand Theft Auto meets a Hong Kong action film with incredible hand-to-hand combat, brutal environmental takedowns, and a gripping undercover cop story. You play as Wei Shen, a detective infiltrating the dangerous triads, and the tension of balancing both sides of the law adds real depth to the experience. The city of Hong Kong is beautifully recreated, filled with street markets, neon-lit alleys, and high-speed car chases. But what really sets Sleeping Dogs apart is its combat. Fighting feels weighty and cinematic, like something straight out of a Jackie Chan movie. Few games make you feel like a badass quite like Sleeping Dogs. Every punch, counter, and environmental takedown is so satisfying. Slamming a thug's head into an air conditioning unit or flipping over a table mid-fight never gets old. But beyond the action, it's the story that stuck with me. Wei Shen's struggle between loyalty and duty made for one of the best narratives in an open-world game.
Then maybe I can cut you a deal. Oh, Superintendent, I'm in the middle of an interrogation.
Inspector, there's been a misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding, sir.
As your superior officer, I'm instructing you to release this man.
But sir, I have it on record that he's Sun On Yi.
I understand that.
From the creators of Alan Wake and Control, Quantum Break is one of the most ambitious games of its time. It blends third-person shooting with time manipulation, letting you freeze enemies, rewind events, and teleport short distances. The storytelling is equally unique, using live-action TV episodes between chapters to expand the narrative. The cast features Hollywood talent like Shawn Ashmore and Aidan Gillen, and the performances add a cinematic feel to the game. While it didn't get the attention it deserved, Quantum Break is a fascinating blend of gameplay and storytelling that still holds up today. I love games that experiment with storytelling, and Quantum Break delivered something truly unique. The way the live-action episodes seamlessly connected to the game made it feel like I was playing inside a high-budget sci-fi show. And the time powers? Some of the most fun mechanics I've ever used in a shooter. Few things are as satisfying as dodging bullets in a flash and watching time explode around you. This game had some of the most polarizing reviews of its time, but here's the truth. The Order, 1886, is an underrated masterpiece. Set in an alternate history Victorian London, you play as a Knight of the Order, a group tasked with hunting supernatural threats. The game is visually stunning, with some of the most detailed environments ever created. The world building is rich, blending steampunk technology with historical elements. The gameplay is cinematic, focusing on immersive storytelling and intense third-person shooting. While it's a shorter experience, it feels like playing through a high-budget film. Every scene is dripping with atmosphere and polish. I remember being completely drawn into The Order, 1886's world. The mix of steampunk tech, ancient legends, and supernatural horror created a setting I desperately wanted more of. Sure, it's a short game, but it left a lasting impression. Walking through foggy London streets, wielding futuristic weaponry, and battling werewolves in tense encounters, I was hooked from start to finish. It's a game that deserved a sequel, and I still hope we get one someday. At first glance, Spec Ops, the line might look like just another military shooter, but once you play it, you realize it's something much deeper, something that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Inspired by Heart of Darkness, the game puts you in the boots of Captain Martin Walker as he leads a squad into a devastated Dubai. What starts as a rescue mission quickly spirals into something much darker. The game forces you to make gut-wrenching decisions, blurring the lines between hero and villain. It's one of the few games that makes you question your own actions, and it pulls no punches in showing the horrors of war. Most shooters make you feel like a hero. Spec Ops, the line does the exact opposite. It deconstructs the military shooter genre, making you confront the consequences of violence in ways few games dare to. There's one particular moment in the game that left me staring at the screen in shock, questioning everything I had done. That kind of emotional impact is rare in gaming, and it's why Spec Ops is still one of the most important games I've ever played.
Stay back! I'll kill him!
Shit, got a hostage situation.
The Medium is a horror game that does something incredibly unique. It lets you explore two realities at the same time. You play as Marianne, a psychic who can exist in both the physical world and the spirit realm simultaneously. The game constantly shifts between these dimensions, creating a surreal and unsettling experience. The atmosphere is thick with tension, and the story unfolds like a psychological thriller, slowly revealing its dark secrets. There are no traditional combat mechanics, but the game builds horror through its oppressive environments, haunting music, and deeply personal story. I love horror games that rely on psychological terror rather than cheap jump scares, and the Medium nails that balance. The dual reality mechanic is absolutely genius, creating some of the most mind-bending puzzles and eerie moments I've ever experienced. It's a game that sticks with you, not because of what you fight, but because of what you uncover.
Your name? I mean, you seem pretty cheerful to me.
Well, it's what I remember. My friends used to call me by a different name. But I don't remember what it was.
Few games manage to be as overlooked yet incredible as Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. This action-adventure game, loosely based on the classic Journey to the West, follows Monkey and Trip as they navigate a post-apocalyptic world filled with deadly machines. What makes this game stand out is its incredible character development. The bond between the two protagonists evolves naturally, making their journey feel deeply personal. The world itself is stunning, with nature reclaiming the ruins of human civilization in a way that feels both peaceful and dangerous. The combat and platforming are solid, but it's the emotional storytelling that makes Enslaved unforgettable. This is one of those games that I wish more people had played. The chemistry between Monkey and Trip felt so real, and by the end I was genuinely invested in their journey. Plus, the world was breathtaking. There was something hauntingly beautiful about seeing nature slowly take back what was once ours. It's a hidden gem that deserves way more recognition. Vampyr is one of the most underrated RPGs of the last decade. Set in a dark and foggy 1918 London, you play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, a doctor who has just been turned into a vampire. The game puts you in constant moral conflict. Do you stick to your oath and help people, or do you give in to your hunger and become a monster? Every NPC has their own story, and feeding on them makes you stronger, but it also affects the world in meaningful ways. The combat is intense, with a mix of melee and supernatural vampire abilities, but it's the atmosphere and choices that truly make Vampyr shine. I love games that make me second-guess every decision, and Vampyr does that perfectly. Every time I needed to feed, I felt an internal struggle. Was it worth sacrificing a character just to get stronger? That moral dilemma mixed with the game's eerie atmosphere made it one of the most immersive RPG experiences I've ever had.
These skulls feed from corpses and the husks of animals. They're not after blood.
While the first Evil Within was a solid horror experience, the sequel perfected everything. The Evil Within 2 blends psychological horror, survival mechanics, and an open-ended world into something truly special. You play as Sebastian Castellanos, a detective searching for his missing daughter inside a twisted, nightmarish reality called STEM. The game allows for more exploration than its predecessor, with eerie side quests that make the world feel even more disturbing. The enemies are grotesque, the story is engaging, and the gameplay strikes a perfect balance between action and terror. Horror games usually force you to either fight or run, but The Evil Within 2 gives you real choices in how you approach situations. Sometimes, sneaking past a horrifying enemy was more terrifying than fighting it. And the story, especially Sebastian's journey, had a surprising amount of heart. It's a game that blends fear, action, and emotional storytelling in a way few horror games do. Rage 2 is what happens when you take the high-speed chaos of Mad Max, mix it with Doom-style combat, and throw in a neon-soaked wasteland. It's an open-world shooter where explosions, insane abilities, and high-octane gunplay are the order of the day. You play as Walker, one of the last Rangers, on a mission to take down the tyrannical authority. The shooting mechanics are some of the best in any open-world FPS. The weapons feel powerful, the movement is smooth, and the enemy encounters are pure adrenaline. It's not a game that takes itself too seriously, and that's what makes it so fun. Sometimes I just want to shut off my brain and cause absolute chaos, and Rage 2 lets me do exactly that. The moment I got my hands on the Grav Dart launcher, which lets you fling enemies around like ragdolls, I knew this game was something special. It's a game that reminds me why video games are fun. Pure, unfiltered mayhem. Mad Max is one of the most underrated open-world games ever made. It perfectly captures the desolate, savage beauty of the wasteland from George Miller's Mad Max films. You play as Max, a lone survivor trying to build the ultimate war machine, the magnum opus, while battling ruthless warlords. The game features visceral melee combat, intense car battles, and a hauntingly beautiful world. Every road feels dangerous, every enemy encounter feels brutal, and scavenging for resources truly immerses you in the post-apocalyptic struggle. The wasteland in Mad Max feels alive in a way few open worlds do. Every storm, every ambush, every desperate fight for fuel made me feel like I was actually living in this world. And the car combat? It's hands down the best I've ever experienced. There's nothing like ramming an enemy vehicle off a cliff while flames engulf the sky. This game deserves way more love. If you love Greek mythology but want something with a bit more humor and color, Immortals Fenyx Rising is the game for you. Inspired by The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, this game lets you explore a vast, beautifully designed world filled with puzzles, epic boss fights, and gods with big personalities. You play as Fenyx, a mortal who must save the gods from the Titan Typhon. The combat is fast-paced and fluid. The traversal, thanks to Fenyx's wings, is incredibly fun, and the witty writing keeps things entertaining. I'm a huge fan of Greek mythology, and Immortals Fenyx Rising gave me a world that felt both grand and playful. The humor was genuinely funny, the combat was satisfying, and the puzzles made me feel like a genius, sometimes. It's one of those games that puts a smile on your face while still delivering an epic adventure. Astral Chain is a game that feels like a love letter to stylish action games. Developed by Platinum Games, it's a high-energy mix of fast-paced combat, cyberpunk aesthetics, and deep customization. You play as a member of Neuron, an elite police task force that fights interdimensional creatures called chimeras. What makes Astral Chain so unique is its combat system. You don't just control your character. You also control a legion, a spectral warrior linked to you by a literal chain. This leads to insane combo possibilities and some of the most visually stunning battles in any action game. I love when games make me feel like an unstoppable badass, and Astral Chain absolutely nails that. The dual-character combat system feels fresh and innovative, and the cyberpunk world is gorgeous. Plus the soundtrack? Absolute fire. Every fight felt like I was choreographing my own anime action scene. This is one of the most hauntingly beautiful games I've ever played. A plague tale. Innocence follows Amicia and her younger brother Hugo as they try to survive in a plague-ridden France while being hunted by the Inquisition. The game masterfully blends stealth, puzzle solving, and emotional storytelling. The world is grim and oppressive, filled with swarms of flesh-eating rats that behave like a force of nature. But at its core, this is a story about family, resilience, and survival against impossible odds. Few games hit me as hard emotionally as A Plague Tale: Innocence. The bond between Amicia and Hugo felt incredibly real, and every moment of their journey had me on edge. The atmosphere was suffocatingly immersive, and some of the later sections left me absolutely speechless. This is storytelling at its finest, and I'd recommend it to anyone who loves narrative-driven games.
Meanwhile, the plague spreads through the village. You think it's normal to have...
And there you have it, 20 underrated masterpieces that deserve a second chance. Which of these have you played? And which ones will you try next? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content.